Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your July 2018 Astro Update. It's Raina here, your fellow Sagittarian, going through the month of July with you. And that's, going to be very interesting for me because I'm going to find out what's going on for myself as well. And July is notable because we have a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. These are powerful new moons and full moons. In the first one, the solar eclipse is a very powerful new moon in Cancer, and the lunar eclipse, powerful full moon in Aquarius. And I'll get to that in a second. But as we go into the month with the sun in Cancer, that is the 8th house for Sagittarius. And the other thing about this is that this is the same house that the solar eclipse will be in on the 12th of the month. So the 8th house for Sag is Cancer, and this is the area of life that deals with other people's money. So there could be some kind of a situation going on where you're focusing on inheritance issues, or the other thing that's going on too with the 8th house is death issues. So that's where inheritance, other people's money plus death equals inheritances. But also sex is the 8th house. I'm going to leave that one alone. But actually, the 8th house is not just sex, but emotional intimacy. And definitely when the sun is in the 8th house, you may feel like a lot more secretive, like you're not necessarily an open book. Sagittarians are usually open books. And metaphysics is the 8th house, and you might be involved with something along those lines. Astrology, the tarot, maybe you're studying it, who knows. But then on the 10th, this is really important because Jupiter turns direct. Thank goodness, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, and it's been retrograding since March. And depending on if you're watching this, I guess you're listening to it, aren't you? You're not really watching anything. But if you're listening to this and your sun is in Sagittarius, your rising sign can be anything. So depending on what house it's been in, this retrograde, it may have slowed something down. I mean, like in the work sector, for instance. And even though it has been said that Jupiter retrogrades do not have that same maybe negative influence that a Mercury retrograde can have sometimes, where things go haywire, or even a Mars retrograde where things can seem like they take longer to accomplish, there still is something in that area, because once Jupiter goes direct, I don't know about like watching in July. I would say more in August, and seeing if your life seems to kind of get back on track. If you feel like, if you can trace back to something not being quite right in the last several months, it could be this Jupiter retrograde finally taking effect and being the ruler of Sagittarius and affecting us more than the average person. So yeah, just do a little experiment there. I'm looking very forward to the 10th of July myself. And then 2 days later, we have the solar eclipse in Cancer, that 8th house. So there's some new beginning if you're married or in a committed, like in a live-in situation, and you have money with somebody else, or, their money affects your household. They may have some kind of new beginning where maybe they get a raise, or maybe they are working at a different place, or getting a second job, and having a new source of income, or they get an inheritance. It can be that you are beginning some kind of metaphysical study, or that you are beginning an intimate relationship with somebody, that it's not just a partnership, but it's like a real soulful kind of a soulmate type of relationship. This could be affecting you psychologically or spiritually, in the sense that the 8th house, being ruled by Scorpio, is a water house. So it is a house that we associate with a lot of maybe shadow work or inner work, things below the surface that aren't, visible to others necessarily. And it's almost like, I think of the phoenix rising from the ashes with the solar eclipse, where you are, it's like you're reborn, born again. Because the 8th house is a transformative house. And Pluto, in addition to Mars, the two planets that rule the 8th house, Mars and Pluto, but Pluto is that transformative element. And in the tarot, the Judgment card is connected to Pluto. And one of the key words of the Judgment card is rebirth. So you may be experiencing that, because definitely there's a birth of something at a solar eclipse or a new moon. And then what else is happening? Oh, I didn't tell you this. I'm going to tell you it now, though. This is, I'm going back a few days. Venus goes into Virgo on the 9th of the month. And so this means that until the 9th of the month, Venus is in a fellow fire sign, which is really good for Sagittarians, because Venus is, they have these terms. I don't know if this is like Vedic astrology or not. The malefic and the benefic planets, okay? And Venus and Jupiter are considered benefic planets. They're planets that can bring good fortune, okay? Money, harmony, things of that nature. So Venus in a friendly angle, which is a trine in a fellow fire sign, until the 9th, is in that 9th house of the higher mind, the house that Sagittarius rules. So that in itself can be wonderful. And this means that money can be connected to 9th house matters. For those who are traveling, perhaps you are working overseas, and this could be like as a traveling professor, somebody teaching English as a second language in a foreign country, somebody just a contractor, or somebody working in some, whatever, overseas. But it can also be falling in love far away. And maybe with somebody from a different culture, a different ethnicity. And then Venus goes into Virgo, and that's the 10th house of career. So that's good too, because Venus can bring popularity and also a sense of just charm. And the 10th house is the house of your reputation in the world. And so you can come across in a way that is very favorable, and this can lead to career advancement. So it definitely has good energy in the 10th house, and this could help you career-wise when Venus goes into Virgo on the 9th. But that was am backtracking a little bit. And so then the next day we have Jupiter going direct, and then we have on the 10th, and then we have the solar eclipse on the 12th. And then the sun goes into Leo on the 22nd, and this is in that 9th house, and the sun trining your sun or your rising sign. That's nice. That's a time when you should feel a lot better, Sagittarius, because as much as, the Cancer energy may have a nice outcome in some way, it is like an inconjunction, which means it's like an awkward angle. And this is because the elements are very different, water and fire, the degrees between Sagittarius and Cancer, 150 degrees. And so it's considered an awkward angle. But Leo is a trine, and so that's wonderful. And what else? On the 25th or 26th, depending on where you live, Mercury's going retrograde again. Didn't it seem like it just happened? Oh, well. This time it's going to be in Leo. So this is in that 9th house at 23 degrees of Leo. And this may mean that if you have some kind of travel plans, that something may be delayed, or that you better check your passport and all that stuff, because Mercury can be like contracts and maybe paperwork and stuff. And if you're going to travel long distance and you happen to have to travel during this Mercury retrograde, so this will be, I don't know exactly when it ends, but it'll probably be like mid-August when it ends. You better make sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that you don't end up having some kind of snafu. They always advise not traveling during Mercury retrogrades because of this issue. But of course, we can't stop life, and sometimes you have to travel during this time. And it's just about making sure that everything's okay. That's all. The other thing, too, is that there may be some kind of miscommunication when it comes to university, because that is the 9th house as well. So maybe you thought that you were going to start in September, and you get some kind of a paper that said, "Oh, you never even signed up," and you're like, "Excuse you?" And you find out that you tried to register online and something got mucked up. So make sure that there are no issues with anything. If you're trying to apply to a school and it's during the Mercury retrograde and you have to fill out applications and send them out during this time and you don't have other options or online stuff, double check it, triple check it. Because as I recall, I did have a situation like that where I had not done something, and I think I had to I had to postpone going to school for a semester. I can't remember, but I remember, sometimes when you're filling out applications or trying to register for classes, you have to be very on point with your details, because that could screw things up for you. And this is a time when it's ripe for that. So just forewarned is forearmed. That's how I look at it. And then we have that lunar eclipse, and this is happening on the 27th or the 28th, depending on where you live. And this is going to be at 4 degrees of Aquarius in the 3rd house of communication. What a place. We've already got the Mercury retrograde just getting underway. And Mercury rules that 3rd house. So that can be very interesting because it's the same theme of like a lunar eclipse. So what could be happening? Well, there may be some kind of ending, like if you have been working on a website, or maybe you've been retooling it, You might finish at this time. It could be some kind of a project with writing, because the third house can be writing or teaching or learning. And this could connect with something with your ninth house, because the third and the ninth houses oppose one another. Sagittarius rules the ninth house in the universal chart, and Gemini, the opposite sign, rules the third house. So you can see that some of those themes that we associate with Sagittarius in the ninth house are also going to be similar, maybe a counterpart in the third house. So for instance, the ninth house rules university level learning. Well, the third house rules learning. I'm saying teaching and learning, but teaching, let's say. While the third house could be teaching younger children and maybe elementary school. And so maybe you're finishing up some kind of training with that, and maybe, or maybe like student teaching, for instance. And the third house is your local area. So maybe you have like a real grand finale where you're just done with this area. If you've lived in a place for a very long time, the lunar eclipse can push you into a new location. So even though lunar eclipses can be endings, just like every beginning has to have an ending before it, every ending will have a new beginning after it. So maybe you've been holding on to living in a particular place too long, Sagittarius, and you need the universe to kind of take over and force you to leave, because something comes about that brings that into your reality. But like I said, you could be finished with a project that involves the internet, or something comes to a culmination ahead. I believe that lunar eclipses, just like the full moons that they are, but a more heightened sense of one, can be times of success, because the full moon is a very fertile time. So there's abundance attached to it in my mind. Creativity, like the ability to manifest is probably very great, which is why I think in paganism, full moons are a very important time for doing magic. And magic doesn't have to mean some kind of spells or anything like that. It can simply mean setting intentions, which if you really want to, get right down to the nitty-gritty of it, could simply be making plans. You don't even have to make it so woo-woo. It can just be setting intentions. I want this to happen. These are my plans that I want to see made manifest. And so that can be a time with that lunar eclipse where something that you have really put a lot of effort in, maybe you have a YouTube channel or a website, and all of a sudden it explodes, and it does really well. It doesn't have to be an ending necessarily. So, so the month ends on a note of an eclipse, and it's not on the last day. As I said, it's on the 27th or 28th. But, so we shall see, won't we, what actually transpires. But I hope that you did enjoy this, Sagittarius. And if you would like your own personalized natal chart interpretation, which also includes your personality traits based upon your personal planets and what houses your planets are in, and looking at some of these transits that are coming up for you in the next year and how they affect your life, and kind of like what the themes are with some of the longer range transits. So I'm going to link this reading that I'm talking about. If you're interested, I'll link it below, and you can check it out on my online store. But I wish you all the best in July, my fellow Sagittarians. Take care. Bye.